Hey, Caitlin, I wanted to leave you some feedback on SA2. As a whole, things are looking pretty good in this essay. In this essay, excuse me, I really enjoyed reading your essay for a lot of reasons. And I want to talk about those with you while I go through and give you some feedback that should you be interested in revising, here are the things that you should focus on. So what I normally do is, say, here are all the good things first, and then here are the things that you should focus on revision. What I'm kind of going to do with this is talk about both of those things at once. Because I just think that organization makes more sense to me with this paper. Your introduction was pretty exciting in that I love all these questions that you ask. I'm working with my 101 students on analysis, and we were talking about how you should often pose questions to kind of guide the analysis. And I love how these questions posed kind of guide the reader to the questions that you want to attempt to answer. And they're good ones, and they're fair questions to ask within the context. Um, and I think that within these three sentences, you're getting at the thesis. So really what you have here is like a 3-sentence thesis. The only thing that I would ask is to rephrase a little bit here to maybe saying the focus needs to be taken away from student performance and instead be placed on the student's well-being and growth. So you're almost there. You just got a little bit of tweaking in the sentence to get there. So I like the context that you're creating here. I think that it's fair, the things that you're pointing out, and I like the fact that you're saying there is a lot of pressure that exists from all these different places, but the pressure isn't totally unfounded, right? We recognize that performing well in school does indeed give some indication of future success. So I really like what you've done there. But then I really like how you pivot you pivot towards the idea that all this pressure might have very specific mental health concerns. So you're being too broad here where you introduce the study that's going to talk about stress. So instead of saying this, a study conducted, do a full signal phrase there. So you need to say in Johnson and Johnson's article, XYZ, the authors conducted a study that, does that make sense? So you need to do the full signal phrase, because when you just write this, I'm relying on you to tell me the truth, right? And I'm not saying that you're exaggerating or you're lying or anything, but this is tied to ethos. So anytime you bring in a source for the first time, make sure that you include the signal phrase. You might have done it here, but if you can, you don't want to refer just to the publication, right? I can look that up on your Works Cited page. What you want to do is refer to the authors and the title. And I can't tell if this is the same study or if these are two different studies. So that needs to be clarified. In addition, you have some sentences here that refer to hard data that haven't been cited. So remember that anytime you bring in hard data or specific information from your source, every single sentence has to be cited, even if you are paraphrasing. I like the pivot that you do here to say that pressure, because this is an interesting progression. Pressure from performing well turns into anxiety and depression, which in turn results in students cheating, right, in order to manage that pressure, but also manage their mental health. I want you to think about how you can kind of rephrase here, because the purpose of education isn't really the point of this paragraph. The point of this paragraph is to talk about what negative actions students have taken in order to deal with their stress. Does that make sense? So I like this sentence. I just think it's in the wrong spot. This is probably a sentence that you should return to in your conclusion, right? Here, you're not talking about what education should be. You're trying to say, students are cheating not because they're bad people, right? That's essentially what you're arguing. You're arguing that they're cheating as a way to kind of manage the stress and anxiety that they experience from having to constantly succeed. So think about how you could more clearly pivot from this idea to your new idea. It's almost there, but these sentences are kind of getting out of the way. So I want you to rethink your transitions here. Just be careful when you're slipping into informal tone here. Just don't say crazy stories. Think about how you can review or rephrase there. And again, you're ending with the idea of dishonest and unethical. Think about how you can more clearly pivot into John Gatto's article. I like what you do with him, and I particularly like what you do with Partonen, but the transition here isn't as strong as it could be, meaning help us understand how we can move from the idea of dishonest and unethical to what Gatto says, that the real purpose of school is not to educate and liberate and make someone their personal best, but instead he attempts to argue that it's all about making a passive public. In addition, make sure that his essay is in quotation marks, not italics. Same thing with Gatto here. And I think that these are actually probably two different paragraphs. I would treat them maybe as separate ideas, because I like what you're doing here, but the specific point is not readily available for the reader at the beginning or at the end as it should be. Yeah, I'm with you here. And I like the fact that you that you see the way that they connect, but I wonder if these should actually be two different paragraphs that help us understand how you see them related to the idea of dishonest behavior as a way to manage that stress and pressure. So it's just a little bit of rewriting in your transitions and your key ideas, I think to get there. And as I said before, I really like that you're allowing us to see cheating from another perspective. It's an interesting one. So a nice place to end, remember what my suggestion was in class, is to give us a way to think about, well, what would that look like? So how could schools or teachers or the educational system better support students so they can grow in healthy, positive ways? What kind of resources are currently available, or what kind of resources could be available? Or perhaps how could we rethink testing in terms of really servicing the individual student instead of like the larger system, right? I think that would be an interesting way to end here. Your Works Cited page, thank you for doing this outside research. You have some tweaking to do here. Make sure that you arrange all your sources alphabetically by author last name. So you need to flip-flop Gatto around, and he should actually be your second entry here. Also make sure that you're using a hanging indent. So the second and subsequent lines of each of your sources should be indented once. And I'm not sure what to make of this right here. You need more information, because really why you cite is to provide transparency and research, and there would be no way for me to be able to look this up. So I need more information here so I could do that. But that is what I'd focus on for revision. As a whole, I think that it's working well. And please let me know if you have any questions. And good work on this, Caitlin.